All right, so what we're working on today is learning how to desaturate colors. So in the videos before, if you guys watched them, or when I've talked about color, I've talked about color intensity. And that is basically like how strong a pigment is per color. So for example, when we make orange, we don't make it with an equal amount of red and an equal amount of yellow. You guys kind of figured that out as you've been doing your color wheel. You want more yellow than red because red is so much more intense than yellow. Okay, so with that intensity, most of the time those colors aren't true to what natural colors are or what we see in observation. So we have to kick them down a few notches, and that's called desaturating. So when you have the paint in its purest form, like so straight out of the tube, it's at 100% saturation. Does that make sense? So nothing's mixed in it. It's completely pure, 100% saturated. So the more of a different color or white or black or whatever that you add to a paint, the more you desaturate it down from its pure form. Okay, so that's what we're really concentrating on today and really looking at complementary color desaturation, right? So I'll be getting you kind of started in a couple colors, maybe like red, and on your color wheel right across from it should be green. So check that on that flip side. Yeah, so we're all on the flip side now, on the tint and shade side that you had. So I'll start you with red and green, and then I'll probably start you off with some blue and orange too, because it's very easy to mix too much blue into your orange and get the wrong colors. And then yellow and violet should be across from each other on your color wheel, and you'll probably be doing that on your own, okay? So on your color wheel, you still have all your slices. You've got red here, green should be right across it. So on the very outer edge on those, it's gonna be pure red and pure green. So you guys can go ahead and start painting in your pure red, and then the green is off of my screen. So you can paint that too. And then that's why I let you guys get one of every color so you don't have to mix as many today. Just have to do that orange, and I'll have to mix that up in a little bit. And I'll be painting with you too, so I'll be trying to go a little fast. Okay, also try to start selecting the paintbrush size appropriate to the space that you're using in. So I should take this, nope, it's on the other side. So if you've got like a large area, don't use a tiny brush. It's gonna take you forever. Use a larger brush. So you can fill in that space a lot faster. Now I didn't have any gel medium, and I can tell that it kind of makes a difference. You guys might be able to see like the streakiness, or you can see like the texture of the watercolor paper through that paint. So as we move on through the semester, I really encourage you guys to use that gel medium for better like brushability. Okay, so there's my red. And then I'm gonna flip my color wheel around so that my green slice is in the camera. And again, it should be directly across from the red. So I'm gonna go in and just grab up some pure green. Make sure that your brush is cleaned off before grabbing it. Okay, so kind of trying to work on brush strokes, filling up the space nice and even. Okay. All right. And then my green looks pretty dark in the in the camera, so I might have to come around to show you guys too eventually. So watercolor people, we're doing the same thing when we get to color mixing, but we're just also going to be doing techniques with it. So you can watch how it's done, like the mixing part, so you get that down, but then you'll need to wait for the technique that goes with it. So like, did your red space have something written down in it? Wasn't it like wet on dry or something like that? Yeah. So that one technically is like what you've been doing this whole time, just painting right onto dry paper. But then everything after that should all be new stuff to you. And so you gotta wait for that, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm gonna flip my color wheel around again to where the red is in view, and then I'm gonna start mixing colors. So what I'm doing is I'm going to make a scale where my red desaturates one step at a time to where hopefully when I get to this little middle slice, it should be a pretty neutral brown color, okay? So this takes a little finesse because you don't want to do it too fast, okay? So I'm gonna get my palette knife and I'm gonna scoop a pretty large amount of red onto my palette paper here, freezer paper, whatever. I probably don't need like a ton. I mean, like that is probably a good enough amount that will get me through all my next 6 slices, okay? So this first slice indicates 100% saturation. I haven't done anything to it, okay? So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna clean off my palette knife and I'm gonna go in and grab some green. I don't need as much as the red for right now. So I'm gonna grab some green and I'm just gonna set it kind of like maybe up in the corner, out of the way. I should have put like both of my paints kind of out of the way, but. Okay, all right. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave just a little bit. I've scraped most of that green off, but I've left just a little bit on my palette knife. Not very much. The ratio between red and green here is really small, okay? So this is what I'm gonna start with. I like to err on the cautious side, and so I'm really scraping the green off like on the bottom and really only have just a tiny amount on the front side of my palette knife. And I'm gonna go directly into this pile of red to try to make my first desaturated step down. So because green is red's complement, it should start neutralizing it just a little bit. And I might have been overcautious and not have got enough green. And if that's the case, I can kind of test it to make sure by just making a little paint swatch next to the first red that I had to see if it's any different. And if it's not, then I'll go in and I'll add more green. So really making sure to mix that up really good. And I'm gonna grab a smaller brush just to do my test here. To me, it looks like I'm gonna need more green, but we're gonna see. So I'm gonna pull some of that and I'm gonna compare, and it's pretty similar. Okay, so I need to add a little bit more green, okay? So it should look just a little darker red. So I'm gonna pull some more green. So it should just start to get a little darker. Okay, that I think I can see a difference now. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So that's what I'm gonna use for my first step. So I'm gonna go back to my large brush because it's ready. And then hopefully this is just one step down. If it's not, I can adjust later. So yeah, I can definitely tell it's darker. It's quite a bit darker. So we'll see if I did too much. Okay, so I'm using my larger brush. I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence. I almost feel like I should use this same color for my second step, or technically my third step, because it ended up being quite a bit of a jump. And I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go. But I'm gonna roll with it. If I've got to correct out later, I've got to correct out later. That just means I get more color mixing practice. Okay? All right. So now what I'm going to do is each time that I'm doing a step, I'm just going to add more green, kind of the same-ish amount each time to neutralize it or desaturate it, just one more step every time. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to grab some more green and I'm going to add it into this red that I already have. So that way I'm not necessarily remixing every single time. I'm just adding more green to what I already have to kind of kick up that desaturation. So I'm going to get my smaller brush. I'm going to do a test to see if this red is darker than the one before it. Nope, not really. So I need more green. Okay, that looks like that works. So always make sure you kind of keep scooping this back up into its pile so it's easier to work from. And get my bigger brush so it doesn't take me as long to paint. Gonna make sure I get all the water out of it. And then gonna start painting. Now, it's pretty close. It's less of a jump than from my first to my second step, but there is still a difference, so I'm gonna leave it. So you should be just getting kind of different variations of dark red, like kind of a brick red. And I hope you guys can see the difference on it. You can, a little bit, up on the screen. Okay. All right, and so I'm just gonna continue this pattern. And I'll probably finish out the red and then maybe do a little bit of the orange, and I think you guys have got it from there. Okay, so when you do desaturation, sometimes people don't realize that you should just be getting gradual different shades almost of one color. So sometimes they'll just go in with a bunch of green and it turns the red brown too fast. And that's not what you're looking for. So it should still be on the red side. And I'll show that to you guys with orange, what a very common mistake is with orange. Okay, so there's red. Kind of getting into a smaller space, so I'm just going to use my small brush here. Okay, so I'm starting to get to the brown. Like this color that I'm making here is kind of like a mahogany brown. So I can see that it's moving towards that brown area, but it's still pretty red. It still has a lot of red in it. So that's going to be brown, like a neutral brown is going to be my ultimate goal. Okay, so I got kind of like a burgundy brown there. I'm going to pick up some more green. I only really have 3 steps left, so I'm going to kind of start pushing that green a little bit more. Okay, so you might notice that you have to start adding more and more green as you go to get more of a noticeable step between your colors. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna paint this one. Okay, I'm getting closer. This is kind of like a darker brown. It's got less red in it. And now I should only have, yep, 2 slices left. So by that little middle one, it should really be a pretty neutral brown, not too green, not too red. Okay, and I kind of did that with the color that I'm mixing right now. Like when I get it really thin and can see the brown, it really isn't red or green. So I went a little too far, too fast. That's okay. I can still use this in one of my slices, but then I've got to take a little bit of this and add back just a little bit of red to get my second to last. And that's fine. So I'm going to grab a really small brush here since I'm going into my smallest area. I'm kind of wetting that up. And so I've got a pretty neutral dark brown. Okay. Then I'm just going to scoop some of this brown up, place it over on the side, and I'm going to add a little bit more red back into it, but I want to clean my palette knife off so I don't contaminate my red on my paint palette. Emma, why don't you go get with Abby over there to figure out what all supplies you need and how to label your color wheel. Okay, so I'm going to scoop a little more red on here, and then I'm going to try to carefully get that second to last step back in there. So it might take me like getting some of that red brown and just mixing it with this more neutral brown, kind of tone it down a little bit. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, pretty close. Yeah, that works. Okay, sorry my computer goes to sleep. Okay guys, so I know it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but does that make sense? So I've got it going from pure red down to like a very neutral brown. Okay, so your green should do that as well. And so what will you mix with green? Red, exactly. Okay, so I want to just do a couple of oranges really quick, and then I'm just gonna leave it up to you guys. Now, when you get to yellow and violet, violet is so much more intense than yellow that you may be using really tiny amounts, okay? Because your yellow is gonna brown up really fast with that violet or purple. So you just need to go gradual, a little bit at a time. You should just be getting darker steps of yellow. That's the same thing with this orange. Blue is so much more powerful than orange, and so you've got to kind of finesse it, okay? So I need to mix up some orange here real quick and kind of clean this. Up, and I'm going to set it to the side. Grab another piece here. Okay, so those of you, you should have already mixed up your orange, so go ahead and just like we did with the red and green, scoop that onto your paper. I'm gonna mix up some orange real quick. And then my watercolor people, I'm gonna switch over to you, okay? In just a little bit. Okay, so with your orange, it's gonna be pretty important that you're not too red and you're not too yellow. Okay, so mine's still pretty yellow. So you wanna get it kind of right in the middle. So it's gonna be really important that you know how to mix up orange. If it's too yellow, these desaturations are gonna come out too green. And then if you have too much red in it, it's gonna start coming out kind of purpley. You don't want that. So you gotta find a really good balance. So like up on the screen, mine looks really orange. Like on my computer screen, it looks really orange, and it looks really orange there. But mine is still kind of a yellowy orange. I think I have it now though. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right. So with your 100% saturation, that orange is gonna go in that very outermost. Outermost slot. Okay, and then I'll show you the common mixing mistake that people do when they mix orange and blue to try and get a darker orange. It works for a different color, but okay, so now I'm going to grab some of my blue here. And I'm going to go in and take quite a bit just to start off with. Okay. So this is the pretty common thing that happens. Can you guys see what color that meant? Well, It looks brown to you guys, but it made it green. Okay, so that means it's like too much blue, too fast. Okay, so if you've made a green, you've done too much blue too fast and you need to kind of back away from that, okay? So you should just be getting darker oranges every time, okay? So when you use blue, be on the very cautious side and only use a tiny bit at a time, because you can always go back and add more easily than taking away. All right, there's my first one. Use my large brush. And it should just be kind of like a step down darker. Emma, let me know as soon as you're finished with writing down from my color wheel, and then I'm going to switch over to you guys, okay? Okay, so all my acrylic painters, does this make sense, like what I'm asking for? Okay, so if you have red, you mix green with it. If you have green, you mix red. If you got orange, you're gonna mix blue to it. If you have blue, you'll mix orange. Then when you get to yellow, you're gonna add purple or violet, and then vice versa, okay? And so that's how we're finishing up this color wheel. So once we're done with these desaturation colors, we're done with this color wheel. I grade them, make sure you do corrections, and then I'll be getting these laminated, and you'll be using them as a tool for the rest of the semester or year if you're in here. Okay, you done, Emma?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna switch over to my watercolor people now.